Hi everyone, welcome back or welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alyssa Cotten and I provide emotional and mental support for coaches, counselors, content creators, and entrepreneurs. And you're probably clicked on this video because you're wondering, does Cruella have DID? Dissociative Identity Disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. So stay till the end to hear my full analysis on Cruella and if she has DID. Let's get started. So before I jump right in to talk about Cruella and the movie, I literally just saw it today and I came home and I'm so grateful. I live in Alaska, so if you can peek up there, you can see a little glimpse of the window that is still light out, and so I figured I would film this video and get it out to you the next day. So the movie, obviously we all know 101 Dalmatians, we know a little bit about the story. So I want to talk about the mental health component, and before I dive in to either she has it or she doesn't have it, I would really like to put some education out there on what DID is, what it used to be looked like, and how there's so many misconceptions out there in the media. So I want to put some full disclosure out there that I am trained in this. I treat patients that have this diagnosis. So this is supposed to be really educational, and when I was sitting there watching this movie, I was like getting excited because this is my line of work, obviously, and I'm like, okay, there are some things, there's some characteristics, there's some symptoms, there's all this information that she's displaying that I want to dive in with you guys. So let's get started. So DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder, is formerly known as multiple personality disorder, and that was changed because multiple personality disorder got so much bad information out there, it got so much bad reputation, and so they really wanted to remove that stigma of someone being called crazy or multiple personalities. That doesn't sound like a very friendly diagnosis, and so they changed it to DID. And DID is it's a whole continuum, and everybody dissociates. And you might be thinking, like, this girl's crazy. No, everybody dissociates. So if you ever have been driving and you get to work and you ask yourself, did I stop at any stoplights? Were they all green? Were they red? That was you in a dissociative state, kind of out of your body, just head in the clouds, going on autopilot. So their whole continuum starts there, just kind of like the daydreaming, kind of doing things on autopilot and asking yourself, did I shut the car door? Do I remember? Those are all kind of experiences of dissociation. So the next level of the continuum is like getting in the zone. So if you've ever been able to play sports and you can just get in the zone where you don't really hear the audience, you don't hear the crowd, you are one, whether that's the field, the court, wherever you're at, you are like in this zone, kind of like that zone of genius where you can like just zone in and hone in on it. So then what happens is we as humans experience trauma. And what happens is during trauma, whether that's abuse, neglect, the list can go on, our body doesn't want us to remember it, so it dissociates. And so essentially our body blacks out enough to kind of keep our heart rate down, enough for us to calm our senses, so that way we can endure the trauma. It's a survival mechanism and a coping mechanism. So as our trauma goes untreated and we experience more trauma, we can have post-traumatic stress disorder, we can have complex trauma, and then after complex trauma is where DID starts to come forward. So DID, there's a whole bunch of other diagnoses that can go in there, such as DID NOS, and then there's also a whole other branch, which is a whole different other video, which is borderline personality disorder. So dissociative identity disorder, the basis, the core of it is a coping mechanism to survive childhood trauma. So you might be wondering, what does that have to do with our movie and our character that we are dissecting today of Cruella? So there's two parts that she talks about, and when I use the word part, that is frequently known in the DID community as what you might call an alter, or formerly they would call it as a multiple personality. So in this movie, Cruella, she's displaying two alters or two parts, and for the rest of the movie I'm going to call them parts because that is what we call them. So she has Estella, which is the kind of the good girl. She's very quiet, she's uncertain, very unsure of herself, kind of stumbles on her words, she just doesn't want to like make waves. And then we have Cruella, and she's like this badass, and she's like, I can do anything that I want to do. And maybe she takes things a little to the edge, very innovative, over the top. And as you can see in the movie, those two parts that she experiences are so polar opposite, even based on the way they dress, their hair, and if you notice, her speech and dialogue are completely different between Cruella and Estella. So as we are diving in, I think it's very interesting. So sometimes we want to find out what part came first, what part was created. And what happens is our parts are created during moments of trauma to kind of help us, again, keep calm and carry on. So I believe that Cruella was there first. And as you know, spoiler, she was not adopted. She was just kind of raised by this lady. And this lady kept reinforcing, be the good girl, be the caretaker, which then Estella, that part of her was created because she had to force that part in order to survive. She had to create that part, Estella, in order to survive at the schools. But as you saw in the schools, when there's like that fight scene and she's like fighting the bullies, Cruella would come out and her mom would say to her, today, let's not have Cruella come out. Let's keep to the status quo. And that are all true symptoms of DID, where you're having these two conflicting parts inside of you. One wants to be seen this way and the other wants to be seen another way. And so what happens is one part of us kind of hijacks the system and it kind of takes over. And as we saw with Cruella, she didn't get enough daylight. She didn't get enough time to be her true authentic self. And so as you see, if we do not connect to our parts and we don't connect to all of the parts of ourselves, we end up having those parts come out in ways in places in our life where we're not ready. So as you saw in the movie, when Estella was getting walked over, they were stealing her designs and she wasn't able to stand up for herself, right? The moment of trauma, she remembered, probably like a repressed memory, she remembered the lady blowing the whistle and calling the dogs, which ended up killing her mom. So remembering that trauma, Cruella came forward full force. And what ends up happening at the very end of the movie is very disturbing because in the DID community, we do not endorse this at all.
So I told you I died. Estella, that is. Poor thing. She couldn't even get anyone to come to her own funeral. That seemed like an unhappy ending. Murdered tragically.
Is she actually kills one of her parts. So she totally kills off the idea that Estella is alive, right? She kills her. And now Cruella is full force 100% of the time. So in the DID community, we do not encourage, we do not support the death or killing of your parts, your alters, because all of them hold different memories and experiences. And it's important that we love all of the parts that are present. I actually have an online course that has an entire whole module that talks about all the different parts. And you might be wondering, well, how do we have different parts? How does that look? How does that feel? And so what happens is, for example, I could talk about myself. So I wake up and my dog is nudging me to go outside. So now I'm in the headspace of a dog mom. Or I check my emails and now I'm a businesswoman. I go to my work and I work with clients and now I'm a counselor. I get a text from a friend that says I need some support. Now I'm a friend. I get a call from my parents that say they want me to come over. Now I'm a daughter. So you see all those different roles that I have. I have different interactions and different energies and different parts that play and interact with all of them. But with DID, what makes it a diagnosis of DID, so we cannot formally diagnose Cruella because we don't have enough information. And the missing information that we need is amnesia. And what that looks like is when one part, one alter comes forward, the other parts are unable to identify what happened, what took place. So maybe if we were able to interview Cruella, we might ask her, when Estella comes forward, does Cruella know everything or what's happening. So a part of the DID treatment is to integrate, and is to integrate all of your parts, all of your alters, so that everyone in the system can be on the same page, hearing and thinking and having the same goals, beliefs, and values to move forward. So as I dive in a little bit deeper after watching the movie and thinking about it, I believe that Cruella was the original part, which is kind of like the part that shows up the most in our everyday lives. And I believe that Estella was created in order to fit in and really kind of live this life. And so I believe at the moment that she believes that she killed her mom, I believe that is when she truly suppressed Cruella and she exiled her away, which is another term in the DID community. And our exiles are the parts of us that hold some of our memories, some of our traumas, our beliefs, and we essentially exile them out and we banish them. And so Estella had to come forward because she made that promise to her mom that she would be good. And that happens so often, especially with trauma, that this part, this good girl, comes forward because it wants to fit in with society, it wants to fit in with social norms, and being the good girl allows her to do that. So obviously she wasn't the best good girl because she was still stealing with Jasper and Horace, but overall she wasn't out there trying to like kidnap dogs and murder people like Cruella does. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, if you stayed till the end of the movie, they had a clip with Anita and Roger, and they had the 2 Dalmatians, and so it looks like they're gonna make another movie. And so I'm really excited to see if they're gonna do a little bit more. Does Estella ever come back, or is it just full force Cruella? But I think it was super fascinating that they had her basically have those 2 parts, and very few movies ever talk about that. We know that in Inside Out, she has like all the different emotions inside of her head, which is a very similar glimpse of what DID could look like, but we've never actually seen it in a full force movie. And I just think that it was so incredible because it just ties in so perfectly that she experienced that trauma. I mean, witnessing her mom dying, thinking that was her, and then that part of her, Estella, came forward, and then that part of her, Estella, came forward and truly embraced this idea that her mom wanted her to be. And as you saw, there's lots of scenes where she's going to the fountain to talk to her mom about her success of being her and not being Cruella. And so then when Cruella realizes that she didn't kill her mom, she says, right, I want revenge, but I also want to come forward and live my best life. And as you saw, she was able to tap into her true creativity and her true sense of purpose. So I really encourage you to connect to all the parts of you, love all the parts of yourself. And if that's something you want to learn more about, I have got lots of resources. You can check out my free guide on anxiety management. You can also take my free masterclass. And if you're ready to dive in and just work with me, I'd love for you to book a call, and you can check out the links in the description below. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about Cruella? Do you think that she has DID? Do you think that she, because of her trauma and because everything she went through, forced her to create those parts, those alters? I'd love to hear from you. Again, my name is Alyssa Cotten. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. I release videos out every single Monday. Have a great day.